Okay, now I've got this set up. I've got my blank set up to start doing some cutting with the Cochrane Bly here. I'm going to start out with my 70 some odd thousandths thick slitting saw blade to a depth of just a little over 200 thousandths of an inch, I believe. And then I'm going to follow it up with this cutter. Now this is a completely experimental thing, but I'm going to see if I can come up with something that crudely would work in place of something like this. One of the important steps that I forgot that I wanted to show you guys was how I've got my spacing, or how I had gotten my spacing set up on my gear blank. So what I did very simply was, let's see if I can, you can see, I think you can see I've got some lines scratched across this. That one's getting kind of hard to see, but anyways, what I did was I bolted my gear blank to my original gear, and I just scratched across the gear blank on roughly every center of every gear tooth here. So considering the experimental nature of this, I figure that should be plenty good for what I'm trying to do here. I've eyeballed the slitting saw on center of one of my marks, since this is a evenly toothed gear. I almost made the mistake of not having a 1/4 inch riser in there and using the surface of the vice jaws here for my indexing, and then it dawned on me that that would be a 1/4 inch low because this is sitting on a 1/2 inch diameter shaft. So you can see I've got a stop set up here. The gear blank is resting, or the gear blank has a 1/2 inch pin driven through it, resting on the jaws of the vise. So hopefully I should have some degree of repeatability. So I'm going to fire this up, and I'm going to start making my 18 cuts. And let's see if I can find a good place to put you guys to give you a little bit of a view of what's going on. That shouldn't be too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of cuts, and then I'll pause the camera and finish everything out, but I figured I'd tag you guys along for a little while, so here goes nothing. Put my shop apron on since I'm going to make a mess of myself with all this oil flying around. Alright, see what happens here. Now I'm going to loosen up the vise. And I'm going to index for the next cut. And tighten the vise back up. Okay, and here goes the next one. Okay, I think you guys pretty well get the idea of it. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this, and I'm going to work my way around this thing. I'm going to pull up a chair and make myself comfortable. I'll bring you guys back when I get about ready to set up for the next cut. Alright, so unfortunately I wound up making a compound error here somehow. I don't know if you can quite make out the thickness of this compared to the thickness of that there. So basically I've pretty well ruined the outcome of this thing, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start trying to run the 90-degree cutter through this and just kind of, do about half of this and see how it feels when it's all said and done. I don't know if you can quite tell on the camera or not, but I've got lines drawn out there on the dicom so that I can kind of sneak up to that with the cutter. So I'm going to just go ahead and finish this off camera, and then I'll bring you guys back when I've got something that resembles a gear and show you how they do or don't work. Okay, I think you can see this okay. I've got one more little trick I was going to show you real quick. I'm going to use the slitting saw that I just made the last series of cuts with to try to clock this thing in the vise correctly. So you can see where I'm kind of going with this. So anyways, I'm going to do that off camera, and then I'm going to get my height set on this cutter over here and just start tickling away at this material until I get to a depth that looks like it might be feasible. So I'll bring you guys back when I've got something that looks like a gear. Okay, so it's not really where it needs to be yet, but the idea definitely has some potential. The gears are starting to mesh, but I need a little bit more engagement. I need to get material out right there in the middle. Almost thinking if I could come up with a cutter that has an angle somewhat comparable to that and use a third cutter, that third cutter to remove material in there, maybe that could get me in the ballpark. Maybe that would, I'm gonna do some research to find out if there's any kind of cutters that I can get my hands on that are comparable to this cutter here, but at like a 60-degree angle or something that doesn't break the bank. I think if I come up with the right combination of those kinds of cutters, I think I can make crude gears without having to buy a bunch of specialized cutters every time I need to make a gear. So anyways, I just thought I would bring you guys along to show you, I wouldn't call it a crash and burn, but it's definitely not what it needs to be yet. So I will catch up with you guys later.